Hello and welcome to today's CUGC user share. I am Stephanie Boozer. I am with CUGC HQ and I'm happy to welcome you to today's presentation on PowerShell. I know that there's been a lot of interest in this, so I'm excited to hear what Martin has to say. Presenting for us today is Martin Therkelsen. I think I got it right. We practiced beforehand. Okay. And he is a CTA. He's also a solutions architect at Connecto in Denmark. And before I turn things over to Martin, though, I want to introduce our moderator. He is also a CTA. He is a leader of our Northern Indiana CUGC group, and it is Benjamin Crill. And he has moderated a couple webinars for us in the past, and will be keeping an eye on the question box for us. Benjamin, would you like to say hello?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. All right, so as I mentioned, love to have you type in your questions during the presentation. Some of those Martin will get to as we go along, and then some of them we'll save to the end. So don't be shy, type them in the box. And with that, I'm going to hand things straight over to Martin to get us going. Martin, here comes the controls.
Yeah, thank you. And you should be able to see my screen. Has it come up?
I do. It's yes, but I do. There you go.
Great. So yeah, thanks for having me on this webinar, Stephanie. It's good to be here. So this will be actually my second webinar doing this, so hopefully it will turn out good. But today's webinar will be about using PowerShell and Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, both with Azure and On-Prem solutions, to deliver a consistent environment to both of them, and that could be any kind of environment. But today, since it's a Citrix webinar, we are of course looking at Citrix systems. So Stephanie told you a bit about me. My name is Martin. I'm based in Skanderborg, Denmark. I work for a company called Connecto as a solution architect, which means I'm doing a lot of pre-sales, doing designs, and as you can see, my focus areas down below is on automation, setup and send desktop, some PVS work, and workspace environment manager as well. I was awarded the Citrix CTA last year. Very happy about that, because that allows me to join a great bunch of guys and girls trying to help out the community with all kinds of goodies. That can be webinars, PowerShell, blogging, whatever it is. But it's a great bunch, very knowledgeable people there, so I'm happy about that. The agenda for today in the main view here is we're going to talk a bit about the challenges for the IT departments as I see them. Also going to have a look at about what needs to be changed for the IT departments, because I really do think that something needs to be changed out there, and you get a bit about my view on that. Then we're going to talk about what the idea behind using MDT as an automation into this. We'll have a short look at my lab environment. That's a bit boring, so going to skip quite fast about that. Then we'll have a run through of both the MDT console and the system behind that, and the same we'll be doing on the Azure platform. And then we'll have 2 demos on how to deploy a Citrix VDA in Azure using the tool I'm showing today, and doing the same thing on the on-prem solution. At the end, we're going to have a bit of a look at the code behind the tool, so you can see what we're actually doing behind the scenes. And we'll have a bit about what's to come for the tool as well, and a short wrap up. So that's the plan for today, and I think Stephanie will put on a poll now. Can you do that?
With the PowerShell question first.
Yes.
All right, guys, so here is a quick poll. And looks like we have a little over half, so just a couple more seconds and then close that out. All right, and I'll display the results for you. There you go. So wow, 50-50.
How can I see that actually? I can't see it anywhere on my screen.
Oh, you can't see it. Yeah, I'm sharing it. It's 50-50 exactly.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so the next question is, are you actually using MDT as well, or are you planning to do it?
And here you go. Couple more seconds. All right, I'll close that up, share those. Can you see that, Martin?
Yeah, I think so.
33 yes, 39 no, and 27% planning to.
Okay, awesome. So hopefully we get the bottom up a bit, so they'll all turn into yeses. Sounds good, thanks. So you see my screen again, right? Stephanie, you see my screen now, right?
We're seeing you, Martin.
Oh, great. So let's dig into it. So challenges for the IT department, as I see them at the moment, is that for the IT departments in at least larger enterprises and mid companies as well, is that we need to help drive the business to make more profit, and that can be done in a lot of ways. But one of them, of course, is optimizing your IT solution so it will be a lean machine instead of a lot of mess. So if you can go ahead and simplify some of the IT landscape just to make it standard system or a consistent system, then you can actually save a bunch of money on the bottom line. And also, if you standardize your systems, you can make it portable to just about anything you want. The on-prem solutions, as we're seeing them in Denmark at least, is they're going to be challenged from the business side now. Early on, we always got all our input from the business directed to the IT. But right now we're seeing that all sorts of people in the IT or in the enterprises are starting to use public clouds for any kind of tool they want to. That could be Salesforce in the sales department, or any developer starting to use AWS or Azure for the test environments as well, or developments. And we're seeing more and more of that, and they're not going to the IT department or ask for help setting it up. They're just going to the websites and actually starting doing it. And that's a big challenge for both the IT, but also for the business in total, because it gives us GSAT. So it's a bunch of cost that should be calculated into the IT budget, but is coming from all sorts of places in the companies. Also, for many IT departments, the public cloud is still a big black box, as we called it. So people know it's there, but they're not using it, and they're not planning to use it either. So it's kind of just sitting there, and it might have been of use for the companies, but they're just not doing it because it's dangerous to start it, as you might know. And also, if you look a bit back, the IT people were always the smart people, if you can call it that. They know all the technical stuff that needed to be done. They need to know how to build the servers, and they know how to build all the integrations as well between the systems. But now that the cloud, with the clouds, public clouds and private clouds for that matter as well, employees don't care about the technical stuff. They know they can just go onto a web page, start a wizard, and actually just ordering a service in. And usually there are guides to actually make some integrations with systems already there as well. So that's how some of the shadow ICs at least started here in Denmark, as we see it. And all this is actually something I prepared like 3 or 4 months ago. On this, where I presented first time at the Eric's Virtual Expo. And last week, Kristen Riley, who is the CTO at Citrix, published a new article on Citrix, where he has 7 points for every CIO in companies that they should have a look at. And actually more of the points I have here is also in that article. So it's a really great read, and I also very happy to read it as well, because it made me actually feel like I'm on the right way as well. So if you haven't read that already, go to the blogs on Citrix and give that a read. So what actually needs to be changed out in the IT departments? Well, the first thing is that we actually need to embrace the public cloud and the private clouds we have. We don't need to just throw everything out into the cloud, but we need to be able to see which services we have internally can be a better fit for the public cloud instead of having it on-prem. Because there are definitely services that make sense to put in the cloud, but there's also services that doesn't make sense. And I think our job going forward is actually being the guy or the department able to tell the business where to get their services up and running and how to do it smartest and at the best cost as well. So we need to be more outgoing to the companies. So instead of just being the technical guy with the pizza and cola, as I write in the basement, that's all the stereotypes we have on the IT people. We need to be able to communicate with the business. We need to take design meetings, just listen to the business needs and try and help them transform that into a technical plan as well, helping them to move forward. And also what we have seen or heard here in Denmark is that we're afraid of the cloud because it's going to take our jobs away. And to be honest, what we're seeing with Office 365 here in Denmark, and I think that's pretty much coming all the way around, is that when that came out, felt like all the Exchange admins were just going to get out of the job. But I think most of the Exchange admins have more to do now than ever before. They need to do the design, they need to do hybrid integrations, and all sorts of integration with the rest of the company as well, so they can actually start using Exchange Online with the normal services they have. So I don't think we have anything to worry about our jobs. We actually just need to evolve our jobs a bit, so we get more on top of things instead of being behind as we are at the moment with the enterprises. So in today's webinar, we're going to have a look at MDT, and the main reason we started looking at MDT, and I did as well personally, is that it's a free deployment toolkit from Microsoft. It can be used for just about anything you want to automate. It can be OS deployment, it can be application deployment, it can also be patching. And you can actually pick and choose whichever one you want or all of them. So you can actually do an OS installation and no application or patching, or you can just do patching or just application deployments as well. And by being able to pick and choose from it, it can also be adapted to just about any environment you can think of. So it could be performed on-premise with just regular hypervisor installs, or deploy VM to VMware or Citrix XenServer and doing all the applications afterwards. But actually the only thing that you need to be thinking of is putting the right drivers into the VM to be able to support the hypervisor you're on, and then just hit go. So it's a easy to understand tool, and it's a free tool. So that's the main driver for us to be using it. And I think that's the reason that Eric is looking at it as well. So as promised, this will be short. My lab environment here at home, I have a test server. It's a standard desktop machine here, 64 gigs RAM and some SSD. I'm using some Ubiquity hardware to do a VPN to Azure. And of course, I have an Azure subscription that allows me to be testing. I also use PowerShell Studio for being able to create GUIs for PowerShell in a very simple manner, so I don't have to do all kind of Windows form codes and so on. They are helping me with that, so really awesome tool. I'll be showcasing that later as well. Yeah, let's dig into the demos. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is MDT. And if you can see my screen now, you can see here I've opened what we call the deployment workbench, which is the GUI tool for MDT. Basically, what you have is a standard file share that you can manage from this GUI. So on top we have applications. So applications is, as you expect, any kind of application, but it can also be application bundles, where you can bundle together different packages or applications to be one. So you can have dependencies, as we can see here. So here we have something we call finalize image, but the prerequisite for that is the Citrix PVS prerequisites package. And then we have a capture package at the end. You can also have regular applications. So you can see I've been creating a package for the new delivery control that just came out, the 7.18. And I don't have any dependencies on this, but it's just a simple PowerShell script executed to actually install the software. The reason for doing the PowerShell scripts is that if I at some point decide I don't want to use MDT anymore, all my packages are easily portable to any other deployment system you can think of. So if that could be SCCM or Altiris or whatever it was, but you can just move the packages along and use them again. So under application, we have operating systems. Again, pretty much says itself. We have server 2016 and 2012. These are the standard imports from the ISO, but you can do custom builds in here as well. So you can do a built-in capture, as you call it here. So you can deploy a Windows Server 2016, do all the patching you needed, and capture that to your new custom image, and you can deploy that afterwards. So you can save on the deployment time at the end for deploying IIS servers or VDAs or whatever you want. Then under the out-of-the-box drivers, we have drivers for that we need when we are deploying the image from the start. So for instance, we have VMware and Citrix XenServer drivers here. That speeds up the deployment because you inject the network drivers at the deployment time. So you can get a gigabit or 10 gigabit of throughput instead of only 10 megabit. So that's what we're using from here. But if you're, for instance, using MDT to deploying for physical machines as well, you can just put in the drivers here as well and start deploying them out. Usually for physical machines, you need to have the hardware control or hard disk control drivers in. So on the packages, we actually have two things. So I don't have anything in my environment here, but you can use it both for language packs and you can use it for the MSU packages for the CU updates for Windows 10 and 2016. They can be placed in here and deployed at the deploy time instead of patching afterwards using WSUS. So tying everything together from the application, operating system, and drivers are the task sequences. So task sequence is actually what you can do to deploy a OS to start with, but all the application and patching at the end. But it can also just be doing the application install and nothing else. So if we can have a short look at this one, deploying a delivery controller, you can see we have a install segment here where we have the operating system, it's the standard 2016, and then we have a section where we install the net framework 4.6. We install the delivery control application, and then we install the desktop studio as well. And all this is just being controlled in the hierarchical way, so you start up from the top and we'll work all the way to the bottom. If we go down to my Azure part here, you can see that it's a lot smaller because we are not installing anything OS related on here. We're only installing applications. So I have one application bundle, which will be installed on this VDA, and then continue afterwards to just being a ready VDA at the end. It is possible to do some advanced configuration in here with elections profiles and so on. We're not going to dig too much into that today. We will be looking at the monitoring later on today as well. So we're going to have a short look at that in the videos I'm going to show you. But this was the short introduction to the MDT part. And now we'll take a jump down to the Azure Overview, which is on here instead. So if you're using Azure today, this should be pretty familiar for you as well. You go into the dashboard, and in my case, I'm going to do the resource group in here. Today I only have one resource group, which is called Citrix Lab-Azure. This holds all the resources I'm using for my lab environment. So you can see here that I have a Azure to Home virtual network gateway, and I have a connection as well. You can see I have two network security groups, which is my firewall between my different subnets in this setup. And we also have a virtual machine that was deployed yesterday called Azure XenServer, which is basically just a VDA placed in Azure that connects down to my local environment where my delivery controller is and all the rest of my infrastructure is. So only the VDA in Azure in this setup. Yeah, I think that was it for this one. We're going to have a bit more look into it in the videos as well. And to not use the depth of PowerPoint, we're just going to go to the demo section where we have a video on deploying VDA into Azure. So here to start with, I am connected to my Windows 10, which I'm using to deploy. And just to show you again that we have our resource group, you can see I have cleaned up a bit since the last time I recorded the video. But all the same resource as before is still present there. So you have a MDT, you have the storage accounts and virtual networks placed in Azure. If we're going to start the deployment tool, we're going to click on the Azure part, and then we're going to connect to our Azure account. Just logging in with your mail address as you probably normally would on Azure. This is a personal account to me, so not a corporate one. And when you click on logon, you will get a bit of flickering on the logon process. But you can see down on the left in the status bar, you're connecting to Azure at the moment. And in just a bit, it will be connected, and we'll start loading all the resources we have in Azure. So you can see there are fields that are going to be populated one by one. And now it's all completed. So we can select our resource group from the top drop-down box. Again, the same with the VNets we have and the subnets. So you're just putting this on the LAN and making sure it's on the SSD disks in Azure. We're also going to dynamically pull down a list of available virtual machine sizes in Azure and selecting the DS2 one, which is a nice compromise with 7 gigs of RAM and 2 CPUs. The server OS selection is also dynamically pulled down. So just putting it down a 2016 server on this, giving the machine a name, and then selecting a role. This role is something that is tying the Azure part to the MDT part, and we'll have a look at how we're doing that later on in this demo. When we hit create the virtual machine, we're going to start a stopwatch. You can see how long it's actually taking to do this deployment. And while that is running, we'll have a look at some of the settings I'm loading, because you might have just paused it here. You might have noticed that some of the fields were automatically populated when you opened the menu or the GUI, and that's been populating from this settings XML file that we're showing now. So you can see that the domain name is Citrix Lab.dk. That's been populated in. We have a demo admin with his local admin account for the Azure machine. We have a very hard password to make sure we can log on. And all the rest is how we can connect to the sensor, which deployment share you need to access to get access to the MDT. Also, the MDT deployment share is, in this case, located on my on-prem solution, but you can have multiple shares and have a DFS route replicating around so that the local clients will always connect to the closest one. I'm just using the on-prem because that's not costing me any money to do. And you can see here when we go into the portal again and hit refresh, we can see that we have a new VM in there. We had a network card as well. And we now have a status of creating. You can see all the details on which machine I've selected, the operating system I selected as well. And just to not get too bored as well, we're going to speed up the clock a bit so we don't just sit around and watching the time go up. So you can now see also in the left, I don't know if you saw it, but it changed here in the status to joining the domain, updating MDT, and now says it's MDT updated. Those are part of the tasks we're going through when deploying servers. So first we're deploying the machine in Azure, then we're joining that machine to the domain, so we have access for it with our domain credentials. Then we're going to update MDT with the MAC address of the virtual machine in Azure. And by using the MAC address, we can start a automatic deployment in MDT, so we don't have to touch anything to actually start it. If we go into the custom settings ini file, which is the part controlling MDT, you can see down there in the bottom, we selected the MAC address, or we captured the MAC address and put all the information in that we needed to do to actually start the deployment on the machine as well. So if we go into the monitoring tab, you can see that we have the installation now running MDT on the server after that Microsoft deployed it in Azure, and takes a bit of time executing every software packages and so on. So you can see there's 7 steps in total, only at step 3, but that's the only step taking time on this one. And now we can see we completed around 33-44 minutes to do a complete installation in Azure of a VDA. So if we can now go to our Citrix delivery controller, we are now able to add the new VDA into our existing delivery group in here, or machine catalog, sorry. So just hit add computers, type in the name, and finish. We've now double-clicked the machine catalog. We should see that the machine is there and is registered as well. So the machine is now ready to actually accept users on the Citrix. If we now go to actually looking at the VDA in Azure, we're going to have a look at the software packages we installed, just to verify everything is there as expected. So we're going to go to the control panel, to the uninstalled programs to get a complete list. And you can see we have Adobe Acrobat Reader, we have some files here, FSLogix, and Java installed, and all done automatically from the MDT installation. So that concluded the first demo. No questions for that, Benjamin?
Nothing. One just came in. Could you select the task sequence from the GUI if you have multiple sequences?
Yes, you can. If you don't specify any MAC addresses, you will actually be presented of a choice which task sequence do you want to run on this machine. It's only because I actually made an active choice to put in the MAC addresses. I know what will be on this machine, then I'm going to auto select it so you don't have to touch anything. Great. Any more questions, just put them in. Always welcome. Otherwise, we're going to take the next demo as well. So surprisingly enough, that will be on doing the same thing on premise. It will be looking a bit different because we're going to start it in the CenSenter, so you can see I don't have anything called VDA 01. And just to prove I'm right, I'm going into Active Directory as well. I do a search for that computer. See, nothing turns up. So at the moment, we don't have anything called VDA 01 in our environment. Again, we're going to start our tool, and this time we're going to stay on the first page, where we have here on the top, we have XenServer. So we have the IP address for our pool master we type in. We have a username and password, and then we can hit connect, and it will say connected down in the left status bar. We just got to name the machine. In this case, I chose to do 3 types of machines, so a small, medium, and large. This could be transformed into how many CPUs do you want, how much RAM do you want in it, and disk as well. In this case, we're doing a really similar to today's one, so we're gonna do a 2 vCPU and 7 gigs of RAM, and 50 gigs of storage as well. So it will be very similar to the one in Azure deployed just a minute ago. Again, on the virtual machine role is the task sequence that we're getting from MDT. And just hitting create, you can see in XenServer, or XenServer, you can see that the machine is booting up. And this will be a no-touch installation again. So even though it's been on-premise, I don't have to do anything to actually get through this. It's compiling all my rules, just starting up the task sequence I chose, formatting the disks as we want them to be. So if you're doing a PVS server, for instance, you'll both have a C drive and a D drive for the cache, and we'll make sure that they both are formatted correctly in this process. So now we're just deploying the operating systems. Again, I'm going to speed it up just a bit because it's like watching paint dry, doing it this way.
Martin, there's a question about capability of using this with VMware as well. And
yeah, definitely possible.
Okay.
Actually, if we're doing it at VMware at the moment, it will deploy faster than on XenServer, and we're having a discussion with Citrix about that. But it's working on just about any hypervisor, so I've been using it on Nutanix, XenServer, Hyper-V, and VMware as well. So it's all working with MDT and also the deployment tool as well. So the deployment tool will be expanded to actually support more of these as well. So we're going to adapt it to typing in the correct credentials for each system, and then we can choose the deployment after that. But a great question, by the way.
And there's also a question on clarification on how you're pumping the MAC address from Azure, or even really on-prem to MDT. Are you doing that automatically, or are you grabbing that ahead of time and then pumping that into your rules?
I'm grabbing that at deployment time, so it's done on the fly. So when we deploy something in Azure, I'll go in and grab the machine from behind the scenes, if you will, with PowerShell. And actually, that's some of the stuff we're going to be showing in the code snippet for Azure. But for the sensor part, it's something we're doing at the deployment time as well. So right after we create the virtual machine, we're going to grab the MAC address from that machine as well. And then we're going to dynamically put it into MDT. So we'll have a look at that in the code snippets at the end. So if I forget it, just remember to poke me, but it should be there. You can see here actually when we're deploying on the back here, it's the exact same application suite that we deployed in Azure that we're using on-prem. So all applications is the same application deployed in exactly the same way. So it's the same application bundle we're using both places, and that will be delivering the consistent environment that we want to, which is also a stable environment at the end. And when it will be done in just a bit, you'll actually see that the deployment on-prem, even on a small home server here, it will be about 10 or 12 minutes faster than the deployment in Azure. So now the deployment is actually done on the left side. And in just a bit, I will be stopping the watch as well. And we'll be digging into the MDT monitoring part. So just as you showed before, we can see the process going on in the MDT console. So we're just going to refresh the screen here, and you see I have deployed the same virtual machine 3 times. And just because I couldn't remember correctly, it is of course the last time one that is the current one we're using or looking at. So you can see here we started at just about 7 p.m. local time and finished at 7:21. So 21 minutes and 36 seconds it took to deploy. And then in this case there were 99 steps instead of just 7. But it's still a lot faster than actually doing it in Azure. So now we're just going to reboot the VDA here and go through a step in the delivery control where we're going to create a new machine catalog and adding this new machine into the catalog. So, no, just before that, we're going to just verify that the machine is actually joined to the domain as it should be. So, logging into the delivery control as we saw before as well. Go into the machine catalogs. Then I'm going to hit create machine catalog. It's the servers, and this time because we haven't done any MCS work or PVS work, it's just a regular VDA, just as in Azure. Adding it in, I'm seeing it's already green there, just calling it Solid 2 On-Prem. And hit finish. And just as before, we're just going to double click the catalog so we can see that it's successfully registered with the DDC and ready for use. And it is. So that was the second demo. Any more questions coming in that we should take now?
There's a question on using the Azure CLI to get the MAC address, but I think you mentioned you're gonna cover that in code snippet, so I think we can after that one.
Great. Yeah. Well, the next part is actually the code snippets, and instead of doing it in PowerPoint, let's do it in the actual code instead. So as I mentioned at the start, I'm using Sapiens PowerShell Studio for creating the GUIs. So when we go in here, we have the PowerShell GUI, and we have the design where you can drag and drop text boxes and buttons and everything. And just double clicking a button or a text window here will actually get you to the code behind as well. So the question we got about the MAC address for Azure is actually the small snippet we have here. So we're already connected to Azure from the PowerShell connection we had before. So we are actually just using the resource group name and the VM name, and that's all we need to get the information we need about the MAC address. So to get the MAC address, we need to get the network interfaces. The command for that is Azure RM network interface, and then they have the parameter of the resource group. And then we have all the network interfaces we have for all the VMs. Then we're going to loop through all the VMs, and when we have hit something which has the name of our new virtual machine, we're going to grab the MAC address from that one and then returning it. So Microsoft decided that it was best with a dash between the numbers in the MAC address, but just about every other system uses the colons, so we are switching that. So that's how we're actually just grabbing it on the fly, putting it into your code. Yep. I think the other thing I wanted to show here was just a bit about the logic. So we're not going to go through all the code, just reading it out loud. But when I hit the button Create VM in Azure, it's going through a bunch of different steps. So getting some location parts, getting the subnets from the text boxes and so on. And this is also where I update all the status bars, so I can actually, as we saw in the demos, when a task is completed, we show that to the user so it knows which step we're at the moment, and performs the next step and updates the status on that as well. And we go through all that when we create the VMs. So there's some blobs for the extra virtual hard drive in Azure. You can see here it's joining the domain. And join the domain is actually a function higher up in my script, where it's using a extension for Azure, so in Azure RM extension object. And you can use that for joining the domain. You can also start a script on a VM of your choice as well. So there's a lot of these different extension object you can use for your customization. And if you look at this one, update custom settings any. So that's where we're gonna take all the information that we figured out, taking the MAC address, taking the role we selected, and putting that into the custom settings any file. And if I can just find that part, that would be fun to see as well. It's on the top. So you see here.
Question in regards to, oh, sorry to interrupt, but there's a question in regards to your tool as to whether or not you've tried to extend it to actually do the provisioning with either MCS or PVS.
The tool isn't doing it at the moment, but we're definitely using MDT for it today as well, both MCS and PVS. And in the tool, it will be a check mark at some point as well, so you can select what type of provisioning you want to use. So definitely it can be used, and it will be used in the tool as well. So the function for updating the custom settings ini file, which is in MDT, is that we are taking the MAC address we found, we're taking the role, the VM, and then just putting that into a section like this, and MDT then interprets that and takes the MAC address and the task sequence ID, and then it automatically knows what it is going to install. So actually, if we just jump to the MDT server, it's probably easier to explain in there. So when we're going to look at the Azure task, for instance, we have an installed Azure Citrix VDA in Azure that has an ID of Azure VDA. And if we have a look at our custom settings ini file for this, which is located on the control, you can see here at the bottom, we're deploying to this MAC address with the task sequence Azure VDA. That's all you need to know, actually, just to deploy. So the MAC address and the task sequence, and then you're putting in this skip task sequence as well, so you don't get asked anything. Yeah. If we just take a small look at this one, this is the Azure RM extension. So you can actually see in this case, I've hard-coded where I want to put this in. This, of course, again, will be converted into a text box on the GUI where you can put in the correct organization unit. And if you're actually in the domain, we're going to do a drop-down box. You can select it just from the using the drop-down box. So you don't have to type anything, just select it, just as you see in the PVS console as well. Great. Any questions on? No.
There's no new questions as of now.
No. So actually, we're also pretty near to the end anyway. So what is to come on this project? Well, first off, last time I actually did a presentation on this, it was asked if this tool was going to be a paid tool or a free tool, or what it was meant to be. At this point, it's still meant to be a free tool, so a community tool that I'll be putting on GitHub or some place like that. Now Microsoft bought it, so let's see if it still continues to be the same. That's the plan for it, at least. So it will be accessible for everyone when I put it online. And the next things that I want to put in before I put it online is actually adding support for VMware, because a lot of the customers we're seeing out there are using VMware as well. So normally we're seeing VMware as the infrastructure part and XenServer as the setup server part, so hosting each a different component. And we want the tool to be able to accommodate both. So the MDT and deployment solution isn't just Citrix, it's just about every component you can think of in your Windows environment. I also really want to add the AWS as a public cloud. I was working on that, but there seems to be a problem having a Danish credit card on the AWS part, so I need to figure that out. The stuff you saw on autofilling in the fields in the GUI is integrated into the XML file. This XML file is actually something I want to build into the GUI instead, so it will be saved in the background, and no passwords will be saved in there. That was only for the demo purposes. And also if we can do some sort of encryption, so it won't be possible to read it if you copy any of the X files to another computer. I also want to do some GUI designs. As you might have noticed, I'm not the best designer, but really want to do an update on that so it just looks a bit more clean. Maybe do it wizard driven instead of all the information on the same page. Hopefully I can get some feedback on that, what makes more sense to people. And yeah, I have lots of more information, lots of ideas coming into this, but any feedback you might have for this is more than welcome. As I said, it's going to be community tool, so if you have any feedback, let's build it in. I did get one feedback on putting all the different resources in Azure in different resource group. So network cards will be in one resource group, and disks will be in another one. I haven't quite figured that one out yet because I can't see how I can do it in the GUI either. So that's something I need to look into with the guy asking for it.
There's a question as to whether or not you are able to, or will you be able to set the Azure region to install?
Yes, you will. At the moment, it will look at my resource group because that already is in the location. So mine is defaulting to the Western Europe part, but if your resource group will be in the US, it will automatically put it in that one as well.
Okay. And there's also a question as to whether or not you worked with Eric on the automation framework and compare and contrast.
Well, that's a yes. We are working together on it at some points. And so I've been doing MDT for the last 6-7 years. So before Eric came out with his framework. But definitely the PowerShell script that I'm using is a variant of what he's been doing. We put a bit of extra into what we have instead. But all the mindset behind it is pretty much the same as Eric has. I've been doing some packages for him as well. So the stuff that you, for instance, been using for PVS and certificates from the framework Eric has, that's been something I've been doing for him. So we're not battling about who's having the best framework. We're helping each other get the best one from everybody.
Very good.
Yeah. It was just
a question as to, I think you touched on it, but just for clarification, where can they get this tool when it's available, or have you decided that yet?
I expect it to be on GitHub because that seems to be the most common place that everyone put their code in. So I'll be both putting in the actually PowerShell code behind it and the exe file. So if you just want to download the exe file, that's downloadable from there. Not quite sure on when it will be there, but it will be on GitHub. That's pretty sure.
Okay. And another question on the tool: is it possible to make every setting a variable within the tool?
Which settings might we be talking about here? I'm not quite sure.
Clarification is just every setting. I think it'd probably be more just on how or if it's possible to extend what you've done and customize it.
Well, it's completely customizable. So when my code will be in there, you can add any field you want to. You can have custom comments on there as well if you want to have a comment on VM in Azure or on-prem. So you can do that. Everything customizable. There's nothing special about what I'm using. There's there's no magic behind it. It's just putting down the PowerShell commands and combining it all together.
It's talking about different company, the OU, language settings, things like that.
Yeah, so OUs can, of course, be, as I said as well, I want to be having that as a field or a drop-down box on the GUI. So if you're using a domain joined computer, you can just list them all and just select it from there. If you're not, you can actually just type it in. So that's one of the future advancements I want to put in there, but that's completely customizable. And you can select one thing for the IIS server, one thing for the VDA server, and you can prefix that as well if you want to. And those also actually, if you jump a bit back to the MDT solution, just for a bit of clarification. So you can see here, that's a different deployment I have, nothing to do with the DH deployment, but I still have a MAC address. And this one, I defined the machine OU for just this machine. So that's something we can put in and customize just as you want to.
All right. And then also a question on Google Cloud and extending to that.
Yeah, also something I want to do, but I think AVS is the biggest one besides Azure, so that's where we're going to start. But any public cloud is something I want to do, especially now that Citrix announced that they have a even more joint venture with Google Cloud as well. So since they're going to be announcing their availability of Citrix some desktop services on the Google Cloud, we definitely want this tool to work there as well.
Okay. And can the tool remove earlier installations?
Not at this point, but it's quite easy to build in, because I actually did it before in pure PowerShell, so I can do test installation and just remove them afterwards. So it can be done. Just something I'll write on the feedback list, so thanks.
Can you do a multiple machine deployment automatically with, so kind of similar, take the task sequence and say do it 5 times simultaneously?
No, not at the moment. It can be a feature just putting in. So if you want to do 5 VDAs in Azure and on-prem, you can just put in the VDA and pound, and then we'll take the next 5 ones. So the task sequence will be the same, but just no feature in it at the moment to do it.
Okay.
But another one for the feedback, so that's great. Loving this.
That's all the questions that have come in as of right now.
Great. Well, also we only have 5 minutes left, so hopefully the wrap up here is hopefully the tool has sparked some interest out in the public, and also hopefully the message I want to be most clear about is that it doesn't really matter which tool you've been using, just as long as you have something in mind that can help you and your company or your customers do the same deployments no matter where you're doing them. So rebuilding your lab or a production environment will be the same process if you're doing it on premise or in the cloud or both places. It's still the same process, the same tools you're using for it. So you have a standardized and stable environment for your users or for the general enterprise. So again, in this case, we're talking Citrix VDAs or Citrix systems. It could be just as easily be an IIS farm hosting the company web shop. So you want to do it in a standard way, keeping the cost down because you automate it. Also, what you see in my demo here is that the actual work to create a virtual machine in Azure or on-prem was, well, about 30 seconds, where you have to type in a few values and then just hit create. And the rest is actually just waiting for it. So you can save a huge amount of time doing customizations to all the virtual machines. So any customization you might have at the moment, need to automate it and actually put that into the build environment. Also, some of the stuff we've been looking at here, both at Connexo and in my private environment, is that we're gonna do your infrastructure as a code. I know that's has been a buzzword as well, but it's actually an excellent idea. So any changes you make to your environment will be in the source control. So you can check it in, check it out, see what change has been made. If you have made a mistake, you can revert it. Or if you just made improvement, you can show everyone what you have improved and where you changed it. So that's also a huge step moving forward. Yeah, just be sure you automate whatever you can. If you're doing Citrix, make sure you automate all the software installation, all the infrastructure installations as well. It's taking a bit of time the first time you need to do it, but afterwards you have a really stable environment and you can easily deploy it wherever you want to. So when your bosses come around telling you need to use the public cloud, you can just say, sure, which one do you want to use? And then we just hit the next button. So if you have any questions after this webinar, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or at my mail address, martin@racket.dk, or citrix.dk works as well. Any feedback is welcome. If there's something I've been doing that is useless, let me know that as well. Then we can try and fix that and make up for it. But I think that was it for the standard presentation. So if no other questions, I think I'll turn it back to Stephanie.
All right, and make sure you can hear me this time.
Yeah, I can this time.
Okay, good. I was talking earlier when in the beginning and you couldn't hear me, so I will grab the screen back, and there we go. So thank you so much, Martin. That was really great. I loved all the feedback and all the questions that came in, and thank you, Benjamin, for monitoring those questions for us today. If you just take a few moments and fill out our survey, I put a link for you guys out in the chat window. It's pretty short, it's anonymous, and it's just for CUGC use only. We like to get your feedback and planning for future webinars. And also just want to remind you all to follow us on Twitter at mycugc, and be sure to check out mycugc.org. If you haven't been there already, we have lots of local groups that meet quarterly around the globe. So get there, find your group, plug in, and get involved. And with that, I will turn you all back to the rest of your day. You will receive an email tomorrow from GoToWebinar. It will have a link to today's recording and also a link to a forum thread. If you have more questions, you can put those in the forum thread on mycugc.org, and we'll make sure Martin sees them.
Yep.
And I think that's it. Thanks, everyone. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And thanks again, Martin and Benjamin. I appreciate you doing this for us today.
Yeah, thanks for that.